I don't normally get into just hype-related stories, but because there was so much news coverage of it, I happened to look into it a little bit, and I can give my view. I wouldn't really call it an opinion, but my view, my perspective on whether or not the new Star Wars is anti-white. Because they've got CNN, Fox News all jumping on the bandwagon after WorldNet Daily ran a story a few days ago that Drudge picked up, simply asking the question, pointing out sites that were making that claim. I think clearly you can say the whole political correct agenda is anti-human, anti-culture, and therefore anti-Western civilization, anti-white, but it's anti-everybody else at the same time as well. It's playing different groups off against each other, obviously, but I'll give you my view on that at the bottom of the hour. I do not think that having a black lead actor is meant to be anti-white. There should be a black lead actor if he's a good actor. No one is going to say that the black Jedi Master character that they had in episode 1, 2, and 3 was bad. Nobody complained about Samuel L. Jackson playing Mace Windu because he's a good actor, and he pulled it off, you know, defeating Emperor Palpatine. This guy just looks like he has the same acting abilities as the other individual that played Anakin Skywalker. People didn't dislike him because he was white. They just liked him because he wasn't very masculine. He didn't carry the role across. I mean, James Earl Jones' voice in a 7-foot-tall armored guy in black with a samurai helmet on, breathing on a respirator, is intimidating. This guy running around in a stormtrooper outfit it has the feel of an after-school movie. See, I said I'd cover it at the bottom of the hour. I'm already doing it. But there's some other big twists to this that are more important. I wouldn't say this film's anti-white. It's anti-male, though. And so the rest of the story is coming up at the bottom of the hour because, look, this is not really important overall, except the overall programming that is going on. That's what we've really got to be aware of. That's, in my view, what we've got to be looking at. So I'm going to give a brief breakdown to the new Star Wars movie. I guess you could call it Episode 7. That happens decades after Return of the Jedi and that giant teddy bear advertisement for small children. Star Wars was new and interesting and original in 1977. By the early 1980s, it was old hat and total 21st century propaganda, selling cheap plastic toys to children. By 2015, it is something far worse. Now, the question has been asked by CNN, by WorldNet Daily, by many others. Is the new Star Wars anti-white? And CNN makes a joke out of it and basically says, look at all the hate on Twitter because a couple of different sites affiliated with white nationalists and people said, you know, what is this, a movie with a black guy as the lead in Star Wars? Star Wars is supposedly a bunch of white people from the 1970s. And it shows how the population is obsessed with fantasy, not reality. I mean, this was a story told a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. 1977 is a different world from 2015. And so on its face, having a black lead actor, I don't think is anti-white. But when you look at all the political correctness where French prosecutors have indicted the presidential frontrunner Le Pen for criticizing radical Islam, when Finnish police have been banned from identifying migrants as criminal suspects in the majority of rapes and murders, when the media won't report when black people attack white people in this country and cover up those statistics, yes, there is an anti-white agenda. But you can't exaggerate it and project it on to a Disney production of Star Wars. Now, that said, the anti-white agenda is just an anti-human agenda. It is a globalist agenda. But when you drill down into these movies, they're first and foremost about selling toys. So if you can have, because that's where they make 80% of their money in a franchise like Star Wars. They've made what? Last time I checked, $4 billion off the movies. Saw a factoid in Time magazine a year ago. Was it? I'm sure it's higher now. $4 billion on the movies, $10 billion on toys, and at least another $10 billion just on franchise fees for the video games. So it's about video games, and it's about toys, and it's about a vehicle. I'm not saying anything we don't know, but let's be conscious about this. To have people shell out money for Star Wars video games, Star Wars toys, Star Wars birthday parties, Star Wars lightsabers, all the rest of it. And sure, some of it's fun. So what? It's free market. But Disney separately has put out the new Captain America, who's black and who fights white people who are constitutionalists, sons of the serpent, sons of liberty, the Culpeper flag, who go out and attack the poor, innocent migrants coming across the border. So yes, Disney, that owns ABC and Marvel Comics, is anti-white, is anti-gun, and is beyond leftist. It is totalitarian. So yes, this is overall part of the rebranding, part of the larger divide and conquer, so that young black kids can grow up believing they're going to get ahead battling white people, but never knowing the real threat, institutions like Planned Parenthood, fluoride in the water, poisons in the vaccines, the list goes on and on. Just type in fluoride, worse for blacks than whites. You can get all the statistics and numbers on that for yourself, and that's on average the physiology. Now, I'll give you the rest of the story right now. I think there's also a big backlash on Twitter against this new lead character. We can put some of those articles on screen for folks. In the fact that he's bought into it all and come out and said, oh, you don't like having a black lead person in the role, get used to it. And his name is John Boyega. Well, there was a big backlash against somebody else in a lead male role because he obviously wasn't masculine enough and didn't have any presence, and that was Hayden Christensen, who played Anakin Skywalker and then Darth Vader. I mean, I would have Hayden Christensen play a wimp in a movie. I wouldn't have him play Darth Vader. See, there wasn't a backlash against having James Earl Jones be the voice of Darth Vader or Darth Vader being black in color, because it was ominous. There was presence. It all meshed together. It worked. The real rejection of John Boyega, born in 1992, is that he has the classical narcissistic daze look in his eye. He comes across as about like a 5-year-old. He doesn't have any presence. And it just makes the movie look like a complete joke. But he's meant to have 12-year-old kids think he's cool and manly, because somebody really manly a little kid doesn't identify with. When you're 10, you don't identify with a 25-year-old special ops guy. You identify with the 14-year-old that's a few years older than you and acts tough. And so you have to understand, this is pure programming to hook young kids, just like they admit Ewoks were meant to sell little girls and little boys millions of fur dolls. Kenner and George Lucas could not crack the female market. 90% of their market was male, so they made that whole horrible movie, Return of the Jedi, about trying to sell girls Ewoks. It flopped. No one wanted them. Just like Jar Jar Binks has a Caribbean black accent, he has gray skin in episode 1 and was a giant flop. It wasn't because he had an African/Caribbean accent. Me likey. It was because it was ridiculous. It was a stupid character, and you aren't going to have Caribbean islanders a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It's just that it's so stupid. It's so badly done. It's horrible cinema. It's disgusting. It's a failure. It's a fraud. That's why people don't like it. Now, let me give you the rest of the story. The really rest of the story. Here's the Washington Post. And there was an article out in CNN this week where the Pentagon said, yes, we're going to begin making women register with Selective Service for a potential draft. Military.com, October 14th, just last week. And that's the rest of the story. At one level, it's about selling toys. At another level, if you've got women and like the top bad guy is a woman, the top person battling the bad guy, the heroine is a woman, that's so you can sell girls all the action figures and toys as well. But that's only at the money-making level. The message is approved because whether it's The Martian or any other new movie you see, there's admitted orders, even in video games like Gamergate, that all heroes and bosses be women. So whether it's Game of Thrones or whether it's Star Wars or whatever it is, suddenly almost all the bosses and authority figures are women. That's to hype women in a power trip into believing joining the military is going to empower them and then they're going to be the boss. That's only meant to screw up the military ahead of getting rid of human militaries altogether in the next 20 years and moving to robots. So women are being used to spike the military, bring it down, at the same time break down civilization and prepare them for the workforce to pay taxes. All right, here's my final comment so far. I'm going to shoot a produced report showing all the documents, all the articles, all the background. I've shown some of it here if you're a TV viewer. Radio listeners can just search any term I throw out for yourself. But bottom line, The Force Awakens is a joke on the public. But I'm not singling out J.J. Abrams and Disney. Everything coming out of mainstream Hollywood is basically weaponized and pointed at you and your family. I've talked to a lot of high-level directors, producers, and they've said they're not allowed to put good messages in films. They just don't get funded. It has to fit into a certain parameter, that it's internationally deployed, that the Chinese accept it, the Chinese government, that it promote globalism, that it promote women not being mothers, but working in the system so the state can raise the children, that it stir up racial division in the name of fighting it, and that, of course, it make huge amounts of money. But I'll say this, I've been surprised by the writer and director J.J. Abrams of The Force Awakens in some of his Star Trek remakes that have come out. I was not really a fan of Star Trek, pretty cheesy. Overall, you know, some good plots. I like the old Star Trek from the 60s for entertainment value. It's the best unintentional comedy in the world with William Shatner, you know, battling the lizard creature, the fight scene. But the last Star Trek I saw where the government runs a false flag to launch a new war, I mean, you know, that's a good plot. He almost redeemed himself, George Lucas, with Episode 3. And he said, I wrote this because of the Iraq War. I changed how Episode 3 goes, and this shows what happened on 9/11. Well, a criminal group in the government ran 9/11. The problem is that the public didn't even understand Episode 3, and they had all these headlines in CNN and others. I shot reviews of it saying, no one understands Episode 3. The plot doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense. A criminal in government that wants to become a dictator stages terror attacks against his home planet, making himself the victim and the hero, he gets dictatorial power out of the strike and then takes out the old republic, claiming that they were part of a plan to overthrow the government. It's what you've seen happen, ladies and gentlemen. And George Lucas told the Cannes Film Festival when it was being released a few years after 9/11 that indeed this is what he believed happened on 9/11. What an incredible statement. And as bad as George Lucas is, it looks like, though, Disney's getting ready to do an even worse job with the franchise. So it's very saddening. I will go see it to analyze the propaganda, but it's just meant to sell toys and get women in the military. And to get blacks to join the military so they can go arm Al-Qaeda and ISIS. It's a pretty sickening spectacle of mind control, and I hope folks are smart enough to pick up on it. I'm sure you are. I'm done for now talking about it. Brain Force is here. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been on this the last few months. You probably noticed I've been more crazed, more focused, less brain fog, more energy, more special reports, and it's because of Brain Force.
One of the worst things with most energy products is it's not sustainable, right? You're gonna crash and gonna feel really bad afterwards. This has a bunch of different antioxidants and compounds and polyphenols.
Everybody's on these drugs to knock their brain out because the brain's so fried.
We kept changing this formula over and over and over again until it became sort of a grand puzzle. For example, the L-theanine inside of it, that is activated by the different compounds in the yerba mate that we put inside of it as well. This just increases the compounds you already have.
This is what you're actually designed to run on.
Exactly.
It's kind of like a car will run on one form of junkie gas, but it runs really good on what it's designed for. You will find Brain Force, Survival Shield X2, and other game-changing products at InfoWarsLife.com or call 888-253-3139.